Hello, this is John, the Vintage Fisherman. Was going down memory lane the other day, and I thought, I ought to do a short video, not short, but a shorter video of some of my rods and reels that I still have that I caught some of my most memorable fish on. And so I thought I would just do a couple-minute video here of that. My fishing started, even though I live in the mountains of the Blue Ridge, my fishing started on the Outer Banks. I went down there with my dad and one of my dad's friends. He had a place at the Outer Banks. We went down there. My dad had never been to the ocean before and never been fishing before, besides with a cane pole, never used a reel. And so we went down to the Outer Banks, and we went out on the pier the first day we were down there, and my dad's friend, Wayne, gave both of us a rod and a reel. And of course, me being a little scudder, it was, I want to say it was 77, so I was only 11 years old. I wouldn't say little, but I was young. And he gave me a push button, and it was a Johnson Century. Johnson Century, just like this. This is not the reel, unfortunately. I've let that reel slip from my possession, but it's a little Johnson Century like this on like a catfish rod. And it probably had 10 or 12 pound test, and he had it rigged up with a 2-bottom rig, and maybe a 2-ounce sinker. And he said, just put it over the edge and hit the button, and I'd hit that button and let it drop and sit there. And it didn't take long, and I started seeing the end of the rod going like this. Well, you're hooked in. When you catch your first fish, you're hooked. And I reeled it in, barely could get it in. They had to help me hand line it and all that stuff, and it was a flounder. Back then, it was keeper size. Now you can't keep anything. But and I went on to catch 2 or 3, and Dad caught a couple. And we enjoyed our first 2 or 3 days at the beach and fishing, and we were both hooked for life. And fast forward, that maybe a few weeks later, I bought some of my first rods and reels, and I wanted to get something I could handle flounder on, and I wanted to learn how to use an open face reel. And I went to the local tackle shop, and I bought this. This is the reel. This is a Daiwa 1300C. It's beaten, battered, and bruised from the fights over the years, but I use this in freshwater and saltwater. I had it on a little Shakespeare Alpha rod that matched. It was silver, had to have a matching rod. It was a 6'6" rod. I would say this is a medium, weight reel. It takes 6, 8, 10 test. And I caught a lot of bass that first summer, but I really didn't get good at, and I'm talking about on farm ponds back here in Virginia in the mountains. I got permission to fish a couple farm ponds, and one of them I could walk to, and that was my favorite because I could go there anytime I wanted to. And a couple others I had to get a ride. And so if it stormed or something while I was there, I just had to ride the storm out under a tree, because that's smart, But I caught my first, I would say, I caught a lot of dinkers, like 1 pound, 2 pound, 3 pound bass. And then I finally caught a nice 6 pound bass in that farm pond on this reel right here. And it was a fight. Of course, it wasn't going nowhere. It was a farm pond. It wasn't even an acre, But I still have the reel. Wish I still had the rod. Don't have a clue where I let the rod go to. But that was what I caught my first real bass on. And fished with that for a long time, like I said, coast and freshwater and saltwater. Caught a lot of flounder, and started using it for a bait rod, catching spot, croaker, stuff like that for our bigger endeavors. We were going after some of the pelagics and stuff later on. Fast forward to my first lunker largemouth. I was on Smith Mountain Lake. I was on my first little bass boat that I had as an adult. So I was in my 20s. And I was back I was on Smith Mountain Lake in Beaver Dam. And anybody that watched this video that's ever fished Smith Mountain Lake knows where Beaver Dam is. And I had just got this rod, this reel and rod. This is it. It's a Fenwick rod. Fenwick Eagle GLC, and it's an old Abu Garcia Ultra Mag XL Plus left hand. I had a Bantam B Mag left hand, but I saw this reel was used at a local tackle shop, and I swiped it up as fast as I get, and I still use this reel. It goes in the rack with my other bass rods and reels, and it's just as slick as a ribbon. Just love this reel. And it's got mag control. It's got quick release spool. In fact, I've still got. I acquired a spare spool for it. There it is. It just goes right up in there. But back to my story. So I pulled up in Beaver Dam the first day I used this rod and reel. Pulled up on a point. I was fishing a jig and pig off of it. Brown jig, brown pig. I think I was throwing a 1/2 ounce jig. And I went to whip it, and I wasn't used to it. I didn't have it set good, and I overran it and bird's nest the hell out of it. And so I did the quick release and pulled the spool out right here. You got to push a button in and give it a turn, and the spool comes out. And so my jig and pig's out there, and I pull this spool out, and I'm trying to, as you can imagine, it wasn't easy to do on a boat. But I pull the spool out, and I got line running through here, and it's all bird's nested. And I'm trying to pick the line out of it. And craziest thing, there was a couple guys watching me on a bass boat around the other side of the point. I was on a big rocky point. I would call it a main channel point. And they were watching me, and they were laughing at me, because I got a backlash. They're like, "Hey, look at that idiot." And all of a sudden my line starts moving, and so I start I let the spool hit the floor of the boat, and I just started hand lining my line back through the reel. So I had the rod in my hand, and I'm pinching down the line, I'm pulling back, and I finally got him in. He was 8 3/4 pound largemouth on Smith Mountain Lake, biggest bass I've ever caught, ever, largemouth bass. Yeah, I didn't even get to fight him on the reel. I fought him on the rod, but I didn't get to fight him on the reel. So a little bit of a disappointment there, but still a lunker. That was, and when those guys were like, "Holy crap!" They were all cheering and everything. Like, man, that was the biggest cluster I've ever seen. And you pull in the biggest bass I've ever seen back in here. And they came over, congratulated me. Of course, I turned the old girl loose. It was at that time of year she was probably on bed when it bounced right in her bed. She got pissed and hit it. She was a big one. But that was my best largemouth bass. Also on Smith Mountain Lake on the Roanoke River Arm, I think I was on I want to say R60. I'm talking about markers, channel markers. I think I was around R60 or 65, and I was throwing an inline spinner on this. This is a Abu Garcia 4601. I'm sorry, it's a C3 4601, so it's a higher speed. That the 46 is the narrow spool. I had not had this reel very long, but I love it. This is my favorite bass reel and rod. As you can tell, it's been pretty well, I use 14-pound Vanish on it. I still got the label, because I fished tournaments with this reel, and I labeled my reels what kind of bait I had it rigged for, and what size line. So I was using 14-pound Vanish, and I love using those inline rooster tails, but the bigger sizes for smallmouth, like the 1/2 ounce, 3/4 ounce, even 1 ounce. Just whip them up along a dock and just rip them back. And sometimes you draw a big smallmouth out, or even a largemouth. And I was ripping back a pretty good size. It was 3/4 ounce inline rooster tail, silver with silver bucktail. I was just hammering it down, just ripping it back, and all of a sudden my line, it just stopped. Boom, just stopped. And I thought, well, I done hit a stump, And I had fished that dock. It was a covered dock, had a walkway beside it. I was throwing down the walkway and bringing back, and it just stopped. And I thought, well, crap, and I lost my spinner. You know, those things are about, back then were even $6 a piece. We're talking back in the early 90s or mid 90s. And I was just kind of doing the, you know, doing the bow thing on it, trying to pop it loose, and all of a sudden it started moving, and the fight was on. I cranked into it. 14-pound bass was plenty of line. I had him. I didn't feel like he was going to break me off up in the pilings, but I wanted to fight him out of it anyway, and I did. I was on my big bass boat then because I was fishing tournaments. I had a 19-foot Procraft. And I hit the trolling motor, spun it back, and started pulling back out of it and just getting him back away from the dock as fast as I could. Had foot control on the trolling motor, and I got him in. He was a 6-pound. I would say might have gone 6-pound plus. You know, every fish story gets bigger over the years, but I'm sticking to 6-pound at minimum. Smallmouth bass, beautiful football, beautiful football, and it was a fight. That thing jumped. It tail walked, it dove deep, tried everything it could to snap me off, but he wasn't going nowhere. And on 14-pound Vanish, and I credit the Vanish, the fluorocarbon, to my catch ratio, strike catch ratio up there at Smith Mountain, because that's really clear water and it's pressured water. Everybody from Roanoke, Martinsville, Lynchburg, Danville, Franklin, Rocky Mount, all those metropolitan, well, I wouldn't say some of those are metropolitan areas, but it's a heavy populated area, especially Roanoke and Lynchburg, and people would drive over there and fish that way because it's about an hour from all those places, and it gets a lot of pressure. And summertime bass like that, it's pretty remarkable. But these were these are some of my favorites. Unfortunately, this isn't the original, but the other three are, and I always have a place in my heart for a old Johnson Century, right? And of course, my Daiwa Silver Series I love them. I've caught so many fish on this series of reels. They're old now. This thing is beaten. I mean, I would love to find another one of these Garcias, these Ultra Mag XL Plus. It's a lefty. It could use a good clean. It probably hasn't been cleaned in 20 years. That's Abu Garcia for you. They're for life. What can I say? My favorite reels for bass and light saltwater and inshore. They're just great. And this is I failed to mention that 6-pound bass is caught on a Berkley Lightning rod. It's a 5'6" medium, 1/4 to 5/8, and it's only made for a 10 to 20-pound line. So yeah, I was right in the range on it. But this rod is I like these short rods. I feel like I have more cast control of the short rod when I'm working around docks. I feel like I'm more accurate with them. A longer rod is great if you're, you know, to me, if you're fishing Carolina rig, even jig and pig. I'm not even sure why I was throwing a jig and pig on this one, but I would normally throw a jig and pig on something longer where I can take up the slack faster, but and a higher speed too. But anyway, that's some of my firsts, and you can also see I've got a few rods lined up here as I'm setting up for another video in the future, or some more reels, I'm sorry. But thanks for watching. Please you know, like my my video, subscribe to my channel. It's catching on. I'm not in this. This is not a business for me. I'd love to be monetized someday, but it's not my goal. It's not my end game. I'm here just to share my stories. My boys all live away from here, and I'm hoping someday they can go back on YouTube and watch and hear some of Dad's stories, you know, and see Dad maybe long after Dad's time on this earth is gone. But anyway, thank you. Please like and subscribe, and I will catch you on the next video. This is John, Vintage Fisherman.